everybody. I'm Evie Roberts, and this is my podcast, Talking in the Dark. Welcome. The aim of this podcast is to raise awareness about blindness, visual impairment, and disability in general, in a happy and light-hearted way. For those of you that don't know, I am blind. I was born with a condition called bilateral anophthalmia. Try spelling that one. It basically means that when I was born, my eyes didn't develop properly, so I wear prosthetics instead. The goal of this podcast is to remove some of the stigma and stereotypes around disabilities, whilst also having fun at the same time. Each week, I will be interviewing people from all walks of life, including some with hidden or physical disabilities like mine, and getting to know a little bit more about them and the lives they lead. This week, I am very excited to tell you that I will be talking to actor and disability advocate Keron. My name is Evie Roberts, and this is my podcast, Talking in the Dark. Welcome. Hey Keron, how are you?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's such a privilege to get to speak to you. But second of all, how's your day going so far?
I'm very well, thank you. I'll just do a quick audio description for you and your audience. I'm wearing a white t-shirt with a yellow overshirt, and I'm wearing some brown glasses. I've got brown hair, and I'm a white man.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for the audio description, first of all. But to begin with, I know that, like me, you have a disability. So could you tell me a little bit about your disability?
Yes, of course. I have cerebral palsy. I got that from birth. So it's weird, isn't it? I don't know what you think about this, but when people say to me, like, how does it affect you? I'm like, I don't really know, because I haven't lived the alternative. So it's always a kind of hard one to quantify how it's affected me. But yes, I have CP, and I guess it does impact all aspects of my life. But yeah, so that's what I have.
Right, okay. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think that if you've never known an alternative to having a disability, you can't really imagine another life compared to the one that you've got, can you?
No, I certainly imagine what it will be like, but I don't think it would be better. I think that's a common misconception that life without a disability would be better. I think that's a misinformed view. Again, I don't know what you think, but life without a disability, I guess, would just be slightly different rather than better.
Yeah, I agree with you actually. I think, like you say, it is a very common misconception that if we could magically find a cure to having a disability, that we would always, without questioning it, choose that cure. But I think sometimes it's not, yeah, like you say, it's not that life would be better, it would just be a little bit different. I think, especially when you have a disability from birth, like you do and I do as well, you just kind of learn to live with it. You just find ways of adapting, and you don't know any different to it. So you wouldn't necessarily choose to cure it or have a different life to that in a way.
Yeah, I think the implication that question has is, would you, if you would rather not have a disability, that's inferring that having a disability is worse, or is therefore you have a worse life because of that disability. And I just don't think that's A, accurate, or B, the kind of message we need to kind of spread. I always, when people ask me that question, I'm like, or not that you asked me that question directly, but when we're talking about these issues of would you rather not have your disability? I know what the kind of undertones of that question is actually trying to get to.
Yeah, I totally get what you mean. So I know you say that your disability kind of impacts all aspects of your life, but how would you say it impacts your life from a reality versus sort of stereotype perspective?
Oh, that's a hard question. I would say I don't really, I don't know what the stereotypes are, particularly of CPR specifically. Although I would say, like, I don't think people realise how it doesn't just influence the physical aspects of my life. It affects kind of my opinions, my approach to life, the kind of my wider thought process about life more in a more profound way than I think people realise. I.e., when I watch the news, for example, and there's some sort of horrible event happening, my first thought is, what is it like to be a disabled person in that environment? And that's just one example of like how it affects your perspective on life, as well as just the kind of the physical challenges that we as disabled people have to face.
Right, okay. Yeah, no, I can totally imagine. So I know that you are an actor, but what made you want to pursue acting?
That is a very good question. It started off all around the same time, really. Two kind of big things happened at the same time. Um, First of all, I was kind of watching TV and watching films and basically asking myself, and as I'm sure you've done yourself, where am I? Like, why are disabled people not on screen?
Mhm.
And when we are, why are we A, represented by non-disabled actors, which happens far too much in the past, and B, again, why are we misrepresented? And alongside that, I was also looking at like school drama productions and whatever, and there was a certain kind of really, do you want to do this? And then I know that I wasn't allowed in one production because of my equipment, and that kind of just sparked a kind of I'm gonna do it anyway in me to just prove people wrong essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally imagine. I mean, I would imagine it must have hurt quite a lot to have that doubt from the people around you of, do you really want to do this?
Yeah, I think they more were doing it in a well-intentioned way of knowing it's going to be hard. So I think it's more of less of a uh, negative intention. It was more of a knowing that the world is not necessarily the most inclusive place for disabled people, and the arts has been a very difficult place for anybody. It's a really competitive industry, isn't it? So add in a disability. So I think it came from a good, well-intentioned place, but I wasn't going to just accept that and just say, okay, it might be a bit hard. And if it's hard, that's where we should focus our attention and work to hopefully make it easier for the next generation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, would you say that that's made you quite resilient? Are you quite kind of a resilient person?
Yeah, I think other actors, yeah, because it's such a up and down industry, as in you can work a lot and then you can have a quiet period like I've had recently, and then like I got a job yesterday, which means that I'm now going to be busy. So you're so up and down that as actors, if if the job is the reason why you're an actor, I think you're going to struggle. But for me, acting is far bigger than just me. It's about how we represent our community, how wider society view our community. I think film and TV, particularly because of the wide audience, has such a pivotal role in how disabled people are treated, and so that's why I work in the industry I work in, despite its many challenges.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree with you. I mean, do you think the industry is getting better in terms of like, realistic disabled representation?
So this is I get this question a lot, and it's a very hard question for me to answer because I don't want to be too negative or too positive because I think both of those will be a misrepresentation of where we are. So let me try and be balanced. I think there's undoubtedly been improvements, right? There's just on Friday we have Arthur Hughes, who's a disabled actor, about to lead a huge Disney Plus series, and the story obviously has a disabled actor as the lead, but it's not really about disability. So, and there's obviously been sex education with George, and obviously I was fortunate enough to be in that show, and all the shows that I've been in, and others have clearly show that things are getting better. However, we obviously started at really well, basically zero, and now we're at probably in terms of actors in the industry, somewhere between 0.8 and 3% of the working actors are disabled, and yet 25% of the British population are disabled. So there is still an enormous underrepresentation of disabled people within our industry. So we have undoubtedly made progress, but there is an enormous way to go.
Yep, definitely. So, can you tell me about some of the roles you've played and what you enjoyed about playing them?
So my first job was in a short film called We're Too Good for This. It premiered at the London Film Festival, and I played a drug dealer called Scott, and it was my first ever job, and he was such a joy to play. He was like a cheeky chappy, and he, yeah, obviously he was part of a drug dealing gang, so it was very different from me. So it was fun to play someone who was very different from myself, and also not as yeah PC as or PG friendly as I have normally worked in. And then I've done a few adverts here and there. And my two big jobs, I guess, was sex education last year, and I played a lead in a show called Kirkmoore, which had a majority disabled cast, and has been BAFTA nominated as well. So I think those are my two big credits that I'm really proud of.
Oh, wow. I mean, yeah, you should be. I mean, that's incredible. Now, if you had to pick a favorite role you've played, who would you say it would be?
That's really hard. I think the job I felt most comfortable in was Kirkmoore, where I played David, and that was only because David and I were very similar people. And it was funny when I got the audition for David, my agent said to me like, "This is you on a page," and so like it was very well suited to who I am, and we share lots of similar character traits. So playing David didn't seem like this big scary. How am I going to do this? It was just I totally related to what he was going through.
Right, okay. I can imagine that when you first looked at the role of David and looked at the script, you were kind of like, well, I've got to do this. We're practically twins.
Yes, exactly. It was some jobs you get through, and at that age you're like, nobody else is doing this job. This is mine. And fortunately for me on this one, it was mine.
Well, that's good. Now, if you had to design sort of your dream character to play, kind of what qualities would they have and what would their personality be like?
Well, to be fair, David was pretty close. David was yeah, I love playing David, but obviously I've done David now, so we need something new. I would like somebody with a relationship or having some sort of um, yeah, love interest or something like that. I think that's not shown enough. Um, I would like somebody who isn't your straightforward goody or baddie, somewhere slightly in the grey area, somewhere in between. So yeah, that is where I would like to move into. Obviously, I'm predominantly do comedy, but it's always nice to mix it up. So maybe do some more serious acting, which would be quite an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, I can imagine that would definitely be cool. So, how important is it then to have accessibility coordinators on set? And in what ways have they helped you?
So access coordinators are so vitally important to the running of a smooth set. Um, for those who don't know, do you in fact let me ask you before I explain what they are, what do you think an access coordinator does?
Well, I've kind of learned a little bit about it in previous podcasts, specifically with a lady called Sam Tatler who worked at ITV, who kind of explained a lot about them to me. But I know that they are predominantly to make sure that sets are accessible for mainly disabled actors and make sure that they can still get around and do everything with the same ability that able-bodied people would be.
Yeah, amazing. So I would add another story. I will explain my experience, and then I'll add another story on which I think underlines the importance of access coordinators. Basically, what an access coordinator does for me as a disabled actor is they will get in touch with me before we shoot, say like pre-production, um, and they will ask me what I need. I have an access rider, which I recommend all disabled people having because they make my life so much easier. Because I'm sure you can appreciate you probably get asked the same questions over and over again. So
Mm-hmm.
it's nice to have a document that's authored by myself, so I'm fully in control of it. That answers all the questions that I know I'm going to be answered or asked. So I just send them the document and be like, well, here you go. Let me know if you have any questions after reading this. And invariably they don't because I know what they're going to ask. Um, so yes, access coordinator will check in with me, check in if I need anything that's not in the access rider. Check, explain to me where I can find them on set and stuff like that. So it's just kind of a heads up really about what's available on that set. And I think that's really important. I don't know what your experience is, but I always like to know what the access arrangements are beforehand because it just prepares you, doesn't it? And then the access coordinator will be there on set just to basically be there just in case something comes up, like there's a toilet that's not accessible, or the access, or more accurately, the accessible toilet stops working. Oh, what do we do? And then their job is to work out a solution, which they always do very, very quickly. So yeah, that's my experiences with an access coordinator. And each access coordinator that I've worked with, I've kept in contact with since. So it's nice to build that relationship.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. That's lovely. But yeah, I totally agree with you about knowing how accessible somewhere is going to be before you go there. Obviously, that's not the case for everything, but if you have a rough idea, it's always good just so that you can either A, prepare yourself if you know it's not going to be particularly accessible, or B, just breathe a sigh of relief if you know that everything's going to be cool.
But either way, just to know there's someone there who it's their job to sort. Because I think as an actor, my job is to turn up to set and do the best job that I can do as the actor. I don't want to be worrying about whether or not I can get to the toilet, whether or not I can get through that door to get that food, or do you know what I mean? There's so many other worries that we as disabled people take on ourselves in the everyday life. It's just nice when you're there to work to have someone there to sort out all the other stuff that we normally have to do ourselves.
Yeah, I can totally imagine. I mean, you've got enough going around your head as an actor anyway, without worrying about how accessible stuff is going to be.
Exactly, and that is yeah. When I'm filming, I have to be fully focused on doing the job properly. So I don't want to be having to think about other stuff that people don't have to worry about usually.
Yep, absolutely. So I know that you have a bit of a saying, which is diversity without disability is not diversity. So can you tell me where that saying stems from?
Um, can I ask you a question first?
Of course you can.
What do you think it means, and why do you think I came up with it?
I think that obviously when we think about this word diversity, I think it's a word that we're definitely using more often nowadays, which is brilliant. And it's about making sure that everyone is included, whether they are, making sure that everyone is equal, whether that be for their race or their sexuality or equally their disability. And so I think that saying, I could be wrong, but I think that saying means if we're not including disability in that, we're not really looking at the full extent of diversity.
Yeah, well done, you've nailed it. Yeah. So I came up with it because, particularly in our world where casting is changing and things are improving as they should be, far too often within the discourse, I was finding that disabled people were being left out and disabled people weren't being included in the same conversation. And it bewildered me because disabled people make up the biggest minority group. And we are also the only minority group that each and every one of us will join at some point in our lives. And it baffles me basically that the disabled community were excluded from these important conversations. So that's why I have that phrase, and that's why I'm trying to get that phrase instilled into like every executive and producer's mind in our industry and director to know that if you're not, yeah, like this phrase says, diversity without disability is not diversity.
Yeah, and I totally love that phrase, by the way. Like I was doing research on you and I saw that phrase, like me and my mum were doing research and we saw that phrase and we were like, yeah, definitely. Funnily enough, we both saw it at different times, but
Oh,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's the one. That's the one thing when I've done quite a few interviews now, and I basically make sure I get that phrase into every interview that I do, and it's so I'm trying to get, if I can get that phrase out there as much as possible, which clearly it's doing a job. If you're finding it online, it's I'm doing something right.
Yeah, I think you definitely are. And like I've said, it's such a brilliant phrase and definitely something that should be, very well known because it's very true. Now, in what ways would you like to see characters and storytelling sort of develop within the industry to make disability the sort of normal on our screens?
So that's a very good question, and there's, I would say, two prongs to this answer. I think, firstly, we need more. And secondly, we need better. And on the more, I think we just need to massively increase stories with disabled people in, and those stories can be centered around disability. But I think it's also important that we have stories that aren't centered around disability as well. So we just have disabled characters pop up as the mum, or as the sister, or as the dad, or as the grandparent, and they just happen to be disabled. So we need both disabled centered stories, which look at disability in 2024 and at different time periods as well, I guess. But we also need kind of casting that is really inclusive, and I guess that goes back to our previous question about diversity and how we make sure we get disabled people in all types of roles. So I think those are the two things. Like, we need more and we need better, and those, but in terms of better, we need roles that don't adhere to the kind of main stereotypes and archetypes of disability representation. Which do you know the main four? Do you know the main four archetypes of disability?
I might have heard of it. I'm not too sure.
That's cool. No, there's no problem at all. That's why I'm here. So they are the victim, the villain, the butt of the joke, and the kind of inspiration, kind of superhuman, kind of inspiration porn kind of thing. So we can see those right throughout film and television history. So to give you an example of the villain, if you look at basically any James Bond villain, fortunately, for some reason, that franchise has decided to make disabled people the villain all the time. I mean, I don't know about you, but just because I'm disabled doesn't mean I want to destroy the world. I don't know.
No, me neither, to be honest.
It's amazing, isn't it? How that yeah, I've never actually met a disabled person who wants to destroy the world.
No, me neither.
Because they're disabled. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so that's the villain. The victim is kind of, I mean, there's so many examples, isn't there, of disabled people being like the kind of meek, oh, woe is me, sad me, like, and it's just so boring. And then the butt of the joke, again, so many examples. And then there's superhuman, which is, I think, this is where the Paralympics, I think, is a complicated representational issue for me. I think sometimes, obviously, we should celebrate the achievements of the amazing Paralympians, but we should celebrate their achievements because they were sporting achievements rather than because they're not inspirational because they're disabled or just because they're disabled. Do you know what I mean? I think it's a difficult one to navigate that one, but it's the inspiration porn is definitely a predominant feature of the kind of superhuman narrative.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I have seen that a lot. But yeah,
I just add also, because I made this point before somewhere else, and I think it's really important. Superhuman is damaging because disabled people are neither subhuman or superhuman. We are just human. And that's what superhuman. The issue with superhuman is it's still dehumanizing us as disabled people. It's still not seeing us as just normal people. And that's why superhuman is damaging.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it goes back to what you said earlier. It's sometimes important to just have disabled characters who aren't highlighted for their disability. They are literally just like a side character or a supporting character, and the disability has got nothing to do with it because, like you said, we are just human. you know, we're not the main character. We're just going about our daily lives just like anyone else is. And so I think that's really important to have that represented on screen just as much as having main characters with disabilities.
Yeah, I know. We need both. We need, and that's the thing. It's like we need main characters that are disabled that explore disability, but we also need side characters that just happen to be disabled. So I think it's not pitting one against the other. It's just we need a whole range of different characters like non-disabled people get when they're auditioning.
Yeah, 100%. So what would you say then has been your proudest moment to date?
Oh, that's very hard. I think you could talk about it positive, personally, or kind of more broadly. I think personally, Kirkmoore was a big step for me, being able to lead a BBC show and know that I can do it, and it's having the belief in yourself or belief in myself to be like, yes, I can lead a BBC show. Disabled people can lead BBC shows, and yeah, so I was really proud of my performance in Kirkmoore as well. But more broadly, I guess speaking to someone like yourself who's starting to say diversity without disability is not diversity, that makes me so happy that that message is clearly getting out there. So I will continue beating that drum. But it makes me so happy that someone like yourself is quoting that back to me. So I feel like I'm achieving something. So yeah, so I think those two things, I think probably what makes me happiest.
Right, okay. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And yeah, you're definitely achieving something with that phrase. So let's sort of look forward to the future then. What would you say are your aspirations and goals for the future?
I'm very ambitious. I'm very ambitious. I'm. I don't want to say too much publicly because it's one of those that I have like kind of personal goals that are personal. um, I think more broadly, I think I just want to do all I can to increase and improve disability representation. I think, like we said earlier, we've come a long way, but we have an enormous way to go. I think, I think there's green shoots popping through. We just need to make sure that those shoots grow into fully fledged, uh, fully fledged plants, I guess, to extend the metaphor. And I think I want to be right in the centre of making that change.
Yeah, 100%. I totally get that. But I could totally see you being, like you said, right in the center of that change. I mean, you're such a phenomenal, incredible person. And I think, I mean, that you say you're ambitious. I think that's a good thing. And yeah, I could totally see you being right in the spotlight, right in the center of that change taking place.
Yeah, I've planned this speech if I won a BAFTA before, and I've done that because I think if you set goals, if you know what you're working towards, it makes it easier to achieve those goals. So I think yeah, I think it's one of people. It's really hard because I think my drama teacher at school was like, I don't think you can have a career in drama. So basically, everything I achieve is just to prove people wrong, essentially. So yeah, so I will continue to prove people wrong, hopefully.
Yep, definitely. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I mean, you are absolutely incredible. I mean, you've done so many incredible things in your life, and I'm sure that you will continue to do amazing things. So thank you so much for talking to me. I mean, it's been such a privilege to get to meet you.
Thank you for having me. I hear you have a very exciting meeting coming up.
I mean, yeah, I do have some very exciting things coming up. I mean, honestly, when I started the podcast, I never thought it'd get this far. But yeah, I've got some super exciting things coming up, which is really cool. But honestly, it's been such an honor to get to talk to you. So thank you for taking time out of your day to talk to me. It really does mean the world.
Thank you, and see you soon.
Yeah, definitely. See you soon. And thank you to my audience for listening, and I will see you all next time.